Today I'm going to go through some of the power equipment and the safety precautions that we have to worry about as we get into our woodworking. Some of the equipment we're going to go through is a table saw, band saw, probably drill presses, router tables, and anything else that we have. We're going to just kind of cover the safety and the basics for every one of those things. So we'll go ahead and we're going to jump into it, and we're going to start off. For the table saw, there's kind of a couple things. First things first, we've got a guard that's on here. This guard is to prevent anything from kicking back up at us as this blade is actually turning. When this blade's turning, it's going to be going in, as you can see, a clockwise rotation, and it's going to want to kind of kick wood back potentially. We have a nice flat table. This guard needs to be in place at all times when we are working. There is a couple adjustments that we want to make when we're working with this table saw. And by the way, this is probably the most dangerous piece of equipment that we have in any of our shops here. This is the one that people tend to kind of get themselves hurt with. So we're going to spend a little bit of time kind of focusing on some of these things. So the height of this blade, right now it's up pretty far. Okay, depending on the thickness of wood that you're cutting, you're going to have to make those adjustments on that machine. The biggest thing with this is that you want the thickness of your material. In our case, it's going to be 3/4 of an inch material. You want this blade to be sticking up 1/8 of an inch away. And we can do that by adjusting the lever that's down right here. If we adjust this lever and we turn this, your blade height is going to adjust as we make it. So we can actually adjust this blade to where we are just about 1/8 of an inch away from on the top. Now, you don't have to take a tape measure to it. You don't have to be real accurate, but we're looking at that. We're probably about 1/8 of an inch away. The advantage to that is if for some reason you happen to run your hands through that blade, it won't cut your finger completely off. It's just going to gouge into it. Like most equipment, the biggest thing is keeping your hands out of this area. When you have these guards down, you want to make sure that your fingers never go underneath this guard at all. Everything that we've got needs to stay away from it. We have these push sticks here that we can use to actually push material through, and that's going to make sure that we don't actually get our hands into that blade at all. Two main methods that we're going to cut wood. One is going to be a rip cut, which if you remember from the other day, is going to be along the grain right here. And if we're doing that, we're going to be utilizing this fence right here. The other method is doing crosscuts which go across the grain. If we're using that, we're going to be using this miter gauge in these slots right here. For anything that we're going to be using, if it's a crosscut, we're going to be using some of the other equipment. We're going to dedicate this machine to only rip cuts only. So we're not going to be using this miter gauge here. We're actually just going to be sticking with this fence. And there's a couple things with this fence that we can use. If we take you over to here, we can kind of see that there is a little measurement system alongside here. In the center of this fence, there's a little bit of a line. If I wanted to cut and I wanted something to be at 1/8 of an inch, I can lift up this handle. I can move this fence back and forth. I can kind of tap that until it gets right on that 1/8 of an inch, or that 8 inches that we want. Once I get my fence set up, I'm pretty much good to go. That we keep the piece flush up against this edge. We can do that by using our hands to kind of keep a little bit of pressure. What I don't want to do is run my fingers underneath this guard. Okay? That increases the chances of you potentially cutting your hands, and we want to avoid that. So no hands underneath here. To push this piece through, I may be able to push this through and have my hand be free and clear from that blade, not going under that guard, or I can use a little push stick that we have here. This push stick is going to allow us to basically push this material through while keeping our hand, keeping pressure up against this fence. Once this wood gets in with that blade there, you can simply use that push stick to push it through the rest of the way, keeping your hands free and clear from underneath there. As long as you do that, we shouldn't have to worry. We're going to turn this thing on. We're going to turn this thing on, making sure that it's not underneath that material at all, and we're going to start pushing through. Once that gets in, I can simply take this and push it through the rest of the way. When you're done, you can let that blade kind of stop, and then you can pull your material out. This blade stops pretty quickly. Now we have a nice smooth edge. This piece is 8 inches across. No need to worry about that. Some of the issues that we may run into as we are running material through these things is this blade may cause a tendency to kick this board back out. One of the reasons we have this guard is to keep wood from flying up at us. But if this guard wants to kick these things back, and it does happen from time to time, if we don't keep this flush up against that fence, it'll bind this board up and it'll create something that's going to shoot out. It's important that we stand off to one side as we are pushing it through. Nothing right here is going to get kicked back. So you can very easily stand on this side and push this through. If you let this area behind you be open and make sure there's nobody behind you there, that's going to allow you to basically make sure if it does kick back, you're not going to get hit by anything. Stuff is never going to fly on the other side over here, but you still want to make sure that it's free and clear from anybody, so that way nobody's going to get hit with any material as it's coming through. The last thing I want to show you on this is we have a little dial right here, and that dial can be used to actually pitch this blade to the side. So if you want to make an angled cut, you can do that on this. I'll go ahead and flip up this guard. That way we can see. On this lever right here, we've got a little lever that we can lock and unlock this wheel. And we can simply turn this thing to the side, and that blade is going to start angling. And I'll kind of show you what that's going to look like. If we angle that blade, it's going to cause these things to kind of turn. If you look down here, you can see that that angle is going to get adjusted right there on that dial. So if you wanted to have a 15-degree angle, you would basically put that through. That blade is now at an angle. Still have to put the guard up. Essentially, it's going to cut the same way as running it through. So the next piece of equipment we're going to work with is the bandsaw. There are a lot of different adjustments that you can make, like getting the tension on the blade, tracking this blade, make sure that it's not going to walk on you. You really don't need to mess with any of those things. Probably the biggest thing we're concerned with here is the guard that we have here. We want to make sure that that guard is just right above this material. We don't have to worry about kickbacks or anything like we do on the table saw, because this blade is going down and it's putting all the pressure down on this table. So as long as we keep material flat against this table, we're not going to have to worry about anything kind of kicking back or making any kind of adjustments like that. To adjust this guard down, we're going to take this lever, we're going to loosen this, and we can kind of pull that guard down to where it's going to be right above where we want it. You want to be able to make sure that you can kind of see this blade, because we're going to have marks, we're going to have measurements on here that we're going to be adjusting. So we'll go ahead and leave that blade where it's right above, and then we're going to go ahead. Now, the biggest issue that we're going to have to deal with is obviously this little circle plate where this blade goes. You don't ever want to take your finger and slide it across. That is going to cut your finger off. As long as you keep your hands out from underneath where that blade is at, never putting it underneath that guard there, you're not going to have any issues. We can take this board, we can tilt it at different angles, we can push these things through. On this one, I've got a pretty wide area that I can kind of cut. If I'm cutting on the edge, I'll be able to just kind of trim and push things through that way. You can make slight angled curves if you want to on these, but we can push stuff through. We can make a cut all the way across, or we can cut out little notches, kind of like you can see right here. So we'll go ahead and So on here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut the first piece there, just kind of trimming it off. Notice my hands are away from where that blade is at. I can kind of support it, I can kind of push it, but I'm staying away probably at least 3 to 4 inches away. As we start making that cut, it's important that you make sure you hold it straight to make sure that you get a nice straight cut. On the notch portion right here, we've got 2 different sides that we're gonna kind of cut. So we're gonna make it, we're gonna cut down to the depth that we have marked. Then we're gonna be able to back that thing off. We'll readjust it with the other side. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna make a couple relief cuts in between those 2 cuts on the edge there. These ones don't have to follow a line. You just wanna make sure that you don't go deeper than what your mark there that you have. Once we get those relief cuts kind of made, we can actually kind of come in at an angle here and we can trim out those pieces. This is gonna hog out a lot of the material that we have here as we come back through. We're gonna do one more little angled kind of cut
right there. And when we get done with this, what we can do is we can actually then take a file or a chisel to kind of knock the rest of that stuff out. And you can kind of see that stuff right there that we would just have to finish up with a file. Once we shut this machine off, we have a brake there that we have to push down with our foot. This blade is going to continuously spin, so as long as we're pushing on that brake, it's going to kind of stop this blade from kind of turning. Once that blade stops turning, then you're good to walk away from it. Otherwise, if you didn't do this, this blade, even with it off, it's just going to continue to spin for probably 10 to 15 minutes.
If you push down on it, you'll get this blade to actually slow down. This one will wheel for quite a long time. Get that brake on. Now we've got this. So the next piece of equipment we're going to go through is the compound miter saw. We call it a compound miter saw because you can actually make compound miter cuts on it. So we can have some adjustments where we can angle this blade this way, and we can also tilt that blade. For here, we're really just going to be dealing with one kind of measurement. Right now, you can kind of see this thing is going to slide, but this blade doesn't want to come up. To be able to release this, there's a little lever right here. You're going to push down on the blade. You're going to pull that lever out, and this blade is going to have the ability to go. We can then kind of take these things. You notice we've got the sliding feature here that we can slide through. We've got a little dust collection there. If you want to make just straight square cuts, as it sits right now, it would be perfectly fine. We do have adjustments here that we can loosen that up to get the angle to tilt. We're not going to mess with that in this class. The one thing that we are going to mess with is the lever right here to make adjustments. So to adjust the angle, you can see we've got a little dot right here. Right now we're at 0 degrees, so that's going to be a 90-degree angle against that fence right there. To make the adjustments, you're going to take this lever, you're going to loosen it up, and down underneath there's a little lever that we can lift up. We can then lift it, we can turn this in the direction that we want. If I wanted a 15-degree angle, I could go 15 that way, or I could go 15 this way. It just depends on the angle that you're wanting to get. Make sure that when you're ready, you lock these things back down, and we're gonna be good to go. It's important to understand with this that any equipment that we have has to be pushed up against that fence. Whether we're cutting an angled cut, whether we're cutting a straight cut, it doesn't matter. Every material has to be pushed up against that fence. You want your hands to stay 4 to 6 inches away from where this blade is at, like every other piece of equipment. As long as your hand is not here where that blade is going to go, you're not going to cut your fingers off. To be able to get these things to go, there's a little trigger right here that you're going to pull. And the best method to cut this stuff is to pull this blade out, push it down, and then push this blade back. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to make a cut. I'm going to show you where that's at. It's important to note where your waist side and where your keep side is at. Depends on how you're cutting. A lot of times I like to keep my waist side, my keep side right here, and my waist side on this edge. You can cut in different directions. We'll go ahead and we'll do this. We don't need to pull this blade all the way across because this material is pretty short, pretty small. We can probably just push this thing down and make it cut. So pull that trigger with the blade off of the wood. Sometimes with this blade, you may have issues to where if you pulled it out and go down and up, it may not cut all the way on that back side. You can see here, we've got a nice clean cut. We don't have very much tear out at all. That's pretty smooth. That's exactly what you're looking for. If you want a 90-degree, you can do that. If you want angled cuts, you can do that as well. We do have 2 of these things. They're gonna work in kind of the same fashion. They're not gonna have any issues. This one is nice because you can actually take the full width of your board that you're gonna get and you can make a cut across of it. Because this thing slides, you can make cuts all the way across a full 12-inch board. Some miter saws don't have the sliding function and you can't do that. With this one, you can. So another tool we may use is called the radial arm saw. This is very similar to the miter saw over there, except on this one, we're really just gonna make cross cuts on these. You're going to do cross cuts on that miter saw as well. So again, anything that's going across the grain. This one is nice because this blade is pretty big. You can pull these things straight across. You can push them back and make that cut. You always want to have it in this back position right now. Just like the miter saw, you want your board flush up against that fence. Pretty simple. Don't put your hands in this way. Stay 4 to 6 inches away, just like on the miter saw. You can use either one of these things. The difference with this radial arm saw is that we don't really have the ability to kind of turn it and make those angle cuts. Our table just isn't set up. So with this one, again, it's cross cuts. We're going to turn it on. We'll hold the material here to make sure it's flush up against that fence. We'll pull the blade out. We'll push it back. As long as your fingers aren't in the way, you're not going to. Once you're done with that, you shut the machine off. This one takes a little bit to actually shut off, but you can see that we get pretty good clean cut, just like we do on the miter saw. You can use either one of these, especially with a long board like this. You have the ability to cut without radial pressure.
So on this router table, what we're going to do is we're going to set this little fence up to where it's just kind of flush with that little roller bearing on the top. We use a little straight edge. This is just one of the combination squares that we have. We're going to pull that fence up right to where it rolls on that bearing, and it's going to be flush up against the edge of that fence there. We'll make sure we lock these things down. I'll show you in a second how that stuff is. So you can kind of see that roller bearing is just moving slightly. The ruler is flush up against that edge there. We've got the lockdown mechanisms right there, and another one on the other side. Make sure those things are secured. The other thing is we've got a hose connected to this vacuum to make sure we collect all dust. So now we've adjusted the height of the machine. We're going to take this little feather board. We're going to drop this thing down. This keeps that board from kicking back. You're going to notice we're always going to go from right to left on this thing. Make sure our vacuum's on. We're going to kind of feed this thing through. That feather board keeps that piece down where it's pushed up flat against that table, and we just run those things across smoothly. And you can see on the edge there, it just kind of rounds that edge over. Now we're going to take that same board and we're going to router every single edge. Doesn't matter the direction of the grain. What matters is that we're feeding these things right to left every single time. You'll notice that my hands are free and clear from that blade. As long as you're not getting that too close, you're not going to have any safety issues. As long as the board's big, you're good. If it's something small, we're not going to want to use this router table. That's all the power tools I'm going to show you today. In another video, I will show you some of the hand woodworking tools that we'll be able to use in the shop.